Many workplace accidents do not happen because people are careless. They happen because a risk assessment failed. Not because it was missing, not because it was unsigned, but because it was wrong, incomplete, or treated like paperwork. Today, we are talking about failure of risk assessment, what it really means, how it happens, and why it quietly sits behind most serious workplace accidents. Let me start with the hard truth. Almost every accident investigation report contains this line: risk assessment was available. And yet, someone still got injured, someone still died, equipment was still damaged, operations were still shut down. So the real question is not, was the risk assessment done? The real question is, did the risk assessment actually protect anyone? Risk assessment is supposed to be the backbone of safety. It is meant to identify hazards, evaluate risk, and put controls in place before work starts. When it works, accidents are prevented quietly. When it fails, people pay the price loudly. Failure of risk assessment does not usually look dramatic. It is normal, it is routine, it is approved. That is why it is dangerous. Let's talk about the first major way risk assessment fail. They fail at the planning stage. Many risk assessments are copied from previous jobs, copied from templates, copied from familiar projects. The environment changes, the task changes, the people change, but the risk assessment stays the same. This is how hazards are missed. A new machine is introduced, a different chemical is used, work is done at night instead of daytime, weather conditions change. But none of these are reflected in the documents. So the assessment looks complete, but it is no longer relevant. An irrelevant risk assessment is a failed one. The second major failure is hazard identification failure. You cannot control what you did not identify. Many assessments focus on obvious hazards only, such as slips, trips, falls. But they miss hidden hazards, such as energy sources, human factors, simultaneous operations, fatigue, production pressure. The assessment looks clean, but it is shallow. And shallow assessments create a false sense of safety. The third failure is underestimating severity. This happens when hazards are identified, but their consequences are downplayed. A fall from height is listed as moderate risk. A confined space is marked low likelihood. A moving machine is considered controlled without proof. When severity is underestimated, controls become weak. And weak controls do not stop serious accidents. Another common failure is generic control measures. Phrases like, be careful, follow procedure, use PPE. These are not controls, they are reminders. True controls eliminate hazards, they isolate energy, they engineer safety into the job. When controls rely on human behavior, failure is only a matter of time. Risk assessments also fail when they are not communicated. A document sitting in a file does nothing. A signed form does not save lives. If workers do not understand the risk, they cannot control them. If supervisors cannot explain the hazards, they cannot enforce safe work. A risk assessment that is not understood is the same as no risk assessment at all. Another silent failure is failure to review and update. Work rarely goes exactly as planned. Conditions change mid-task, equipment behaves differently, unexpected hazards appear. But the risk assessment remains unchanged. When reality changes and documents don't, the document becomes dangerous. Now let's talk about pressure. Production pressure, time pressure, cost pressure. Risk assessments often fail under pressure. Controls are removed to save time, steps are skipped to meet deadlines, shortcuts become normal. The assessment says one thing, the job does another. This gap is where accidents live. One of the most serious failures is when risk assessments are done after decisions are already made. The job is approved first, then the risk assessment is written to justify it. Hazards are minimized, risks are adjusted, controls are written to fit the decision. This turns risk assessment into a formality, and formalities do not prevent accidents. Let's be clear, risk assessment is not a compliance activity. It is a thinking process. When it becomes paperwork, it fails. Now let's connect this to real accidents. After serious incidents, investigations often reveal the hazard was known, the tax was assessed, the document existed. But the wrong risk was assessed, the real hazard was missed, or the controls were never effective. This is why we say the accident happened long before the incident. It happened during planning, during assessment, during approval. Failure of risk assessment also affects leadership. When leaders sign off on weak assessment, they unknowingly accept risk. When supervisors allow deviations, they normalize unsafe work. When safety professionals focus on form instead of substance, they lose influence. A strong risk assessment challenges decision, a weak one supports bad decisions. That difference matters. Now let's talk about what good risk assessment looks like. It is task specific, not generic. It considers the environment, the people, the equipment, the timing. It identifies worst case consequences, not just likely ones. It uses the hierarchy of controls properly, such as elimination first, engineering next, administrative and PPA last. It is explained to workers, not just signed by them. And it is reviewed whenever conditions change. Most importantly, a good risk assessment is honest. It does not hide risk. It does not reduce costs to make jobs look safe. It does not ignore uncomfortable hazards. It tells the truth. If you remember one thing from this video, remember this. A risk assessment does not prevent accidents. Good decisions do. The assessment only works when people use it to make better choices. Many organizations believe they have a safety problem. In reality, they have a decision-making problem. And risk assessment sits right at the center of that. So the next time you see a risk assessment, do not ask, is it signed? Ask, what could seriously go wrong here? Have we really controlled that? And what happens if this control fails? Those questions save lives. Failure of risk assessment is not about paperwork. It is about missed thinking. And missed thinking has consequences. If this content helped you see risk assessment differently, kindly share it with someone responsible for approving work. Because accidents rarely come from nowhere. They come from what we fail to see. So, stay alert, stay professional, and never treat risk assessment as a routine task. Because safety is decided long before the job begins.